Robert Scheer, one-time editor of Ramparts magazines, the author of 6 books. He's the left of KCRW's nationally syndicated Left, Right, and Center. He's a weekly columnist at the San Francisco Chronicle and a contributing editor to The Nation. His web magazine, Truth Dig, is I remember I had him on the day it was first put up online, and it has turned into a tremendous success. Welcome, Robert Scheer.
Right, and don't forget, I'm the author of The Pornography of Power, How Defense Hawks Hijacked 9/11 and Weakened America, which is the elephant in the room under this election that no one wants to talk about, which is the military budget, which takes 6 out of every 10 discretionary dollars, which is at an all-time high in constant dollars since World War II, bigger than the Vietnam or Korea War, and equal to the spent by the rest of the world combined. So I'm very big these days on the military budget, and neither of the candidates want to discuss it in any serious way, and they're both for increasing it.
Right. And I'm sorry, when I looked at the site, and at the Truth Dig site, looking for that book, because I knew you had a new one coming out or just out, I couldn't find it. Pornography of Power. Yes,
The Pornography of Power, How Defense Hawks Hijacked 9/11 and Weakened America, 12, and I'll send you a copy.
Great.
But, I'm really furious about this not being discussed, not just because I have a book, but I think it's absolute hypocrisy to say you're going to do anything to improve any of these needed domestic programs. You're certainly not going to get the money to build levees, to stop flooding. You're not going to improve the schools. You're not going to help people in the subprime mortgage scandal. You're not going to have the money for any of that if almost $6 out of $10 from the discretionary budget, the part that's left over after Social Security and Medicare, goes to the military. And anybody says otherwise is conning you. And I think both candidates are doing that now. They both say they want to increase military spending. And as I pointed out before, it's at a level higher than during the Vietnam or Korea War in real dollars, inflation-adjusted dollars. It's absolutely outrageous. It's being spent on weapon systems like submarines that Lieberman wants because they're made in Connecticut, and they cost $2.5 billion a piece. The F-22 fighter that has yet to fly a single mission in Iraq or Afghanistan, and that's a $65 billion program. The F-35 Joint Strike Fighter, which is a $300 billion program. I can go down the whole list. This is not discussed. The Democrats and Republicans both support it. They both vote for it. And this is what Eisenhower warned about when the military-industrial complex has a life of its own that has absolutely nothing to do with national security or anything else other than making money for these people. And the unions back it, where there got some jobs involved, and so the Democrats go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it seems insane on its face, and as I mentioned before, it wasn't just McCain and Obama. Hillary Clinton was in the same position, and in fact, most of the candidates took the same position, with some few exceptions. That they don't even talk about it, and in fact, they leave it to a phrase or two about, strengthening America, keeping America strong, that kind of stuff, when in fact, as you're pointing out, huge amounts of this money that if we translated some of those programs that are useless in the current global situation to healthcare, to education, to nutrition, to things like that, we'd be in a much better position. Is it that I remember Bill Moyers did a wonderful, I think it was a 1 or 2 hour special a few years ago, in which he broke it down and said that basically Congress treats it like a jobs program, and in that way they also, as you pointed out, the unions are co-opted. Is that what happens? Is that for each individual representative of the people, it's money to their district, and so everyone just pretends it doesn't mean what it means?
It's a sick, corrupt socialism is what it is. It's a government handout. At a time when we cut the welfare program, and we don't have a federal poverty program, which was actually helping millions of children and their mothers. We don't have that anymore. Clinton did that one, in the name of efficiency. We put every one of these domestic programs under a microscope. But you want to build those 2 subs a year there in Connecticut, which is equal to the amount of money that it would have cost us to insure 4 million uninsured kids that George W. Bush vetoed that bill. So we could 2 subs or cover the insurance for 4 million kids. We don't cover the insurance for the 4 million kids. We build the subs. You got the C-17 cargo plane being built here in Long Beach, and Barbara Boxer, Schwarzenegger, Rohrabacher, all of these people, right, left, Democrat, Republican, they're part of the Red Alert team that when money is going to be cut for that program that the Pentagon has wanted to mothball for 10 years, when money's going to be cut, they jump into action. Yes, it's Boeing's profit and the campaign contribution. Boeing is one of the sponsors of Meet the Press. You know, they're not adverse to influencing opinion that way, and the unions and the jobs. And, you know, my feeling is, okay, I feel for those workers. Give them early retirement, you know, give them job training. Do lots of things like that, but don't go build an incredibly expensive cargo plane that has no real function now. And you know, NPR just had a report yesterday on the mid-air fuel air tanker program. And wonderful news, it's back on track, and Boeing may get the contract. You know, and McCain was attacked by the Democratic National Committee for having dared question that $100 billion tanker program that is tied to a Cold War bombing, nuclear bombing weapon. You know, the idea of sending bombers over with nukes, so you have to keep them mid-fuel air. It has no connection with any realistic threat that we face now. $100 billion program. McCain dared challenge it, and the Democrats even attack him for it. And NPR has a big program on where they talk about that plane as if it's a jobs program, and, you know, has nothing to do with security. They don't even, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, all reported on that stuff, never once in a single sentence mentioning what is its military function.
I mean, I read some of those articles, but I didn't probably read them down to their finish and assume that would be covered at some point. In other words, when this came up, that whether Boeing was going to get it or Northrop Grumman, right?
Yeah.
The big thing was, you know, between those two companies, et cetera, et cetera.
And Northrop had a European partner,
right,
the parent company of Airbus, and so jobs were being lost. The original scam was, it's discussed in my book, in the Pornography of Power. That's why I call it the Pornography of Power. These people don't care about the thing they're talking about. It's a totally pornographic, excessive, obscene experience. And so when this thing first came up, it was leasing Boeing civilian airplanes that were not needed because the air traffic was down. And so this is a way of helping Boeing out. We'll throw $35 billion at them, and then it'll grow to $100 billion. And that's what offended Senators Warner and McCain. They objected. The CFO of Boeing went to federal prison. The top procurement officer in the Air Force went to federal prison. This is not kidding around.
I know.
And yet these idiots in the mass media, you know, treat it as if, what McCain did was interfere with a perfectly valid jobs program or business opportunity. Nonsense. McCain sent these people to jail because he did due diligence, which very few people in Congress bother to do.
Now, what seems to, as I said, I remember that Moyer special going in how every contractor and their lobbyists develops a relationship with their Congress, and the Congress counts on this money, and it's so it's all done. And as you point out, pornography is simulated sex. This is simulated security, right?
Exactly. Don't confuse the thing being advertised with the thing itself. They're promising you security, but they're giving you a lap dance that you're going to pay a lot of money for and get nothing in return. And I'll tell you something. What's so outrageous about it is they're all in on it. It's what Eisenhower warned us about this. He said the military-industrial complex has its tentacles in every congressional district, and they're all in on it. But not only is it a question of wasting money, what people forget is this is what builds the constituency for war.
Yes.
No one wants to build these weapons without finding an excuse for using them. That's what the Iraq War was all about. Was how can we have shock and awe, you know, in Afghanistan where they don't even have an air force? You know, we have to have a real target? What Rumsfeld said, there were no good targets in Afghanistan. We have to have a real war to show our war toys off. Unfortunately, Saddam Hussein collapsed too quickly, and so now they every once in a while they make noises about China. Unfortunately, peace is breaking out with China and Taiwan, so there's no excuse there, you know, and you know, it's a big scandal. And what bothers me is these people on television and in the New York Times and everywhere, they write about it and refer to it as if this is a sensible use of taxpayer dollars. And if you try to question it, as I have done with my Pornography of Power book, you know, they don't want to touch it. They won't examine it. They won't even criticize it. You know, it's like not on their radar.
You're saying no one will deal with your book even?
Look, look, I'm not going to do sour grapes. My book is doing fine. I got some nice reviews, Publishers Weekly, Chicago sometimes, what have you. Yeah, no, I'm not getting reviewed by the New York Times.
Right.
I'm not getting mentioned by any of those talking head shows. You know, why? Because it's not on their radar. It's not one of the things they want to talk about, and it's actually inconvenient to talk about it because, you know, they all favor this kind of wasteful spending of money because it comes back to them.
Yeah.
You know, it comes back in newspaper advertising, television advertising, campaign contributions. And so they're all in on this scam. And what they tried to present the two things. They say, one, it's really not a lot of money. Oh. They say, it's only 4% of gross national blah, 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 blah. Fact is, it's more money than we spend on everything else from the federal government than when we take out Social Security and Medicare. So it's up to 60%, almost 60% of the discretionary federal budget. It is more money than we spent in real dollars during the Korean and Vietnam War. It is real money. It's trillions of dollars. And we're making commitments 20, 30 years up the road. You don't turn these weapon systems off. You know, you commit to a weapon system, and you're going to be funding it for the next 20 years. And that's what's involved here. And secondly, you're not going to build these systems without finding an excuse to use them. And I'm telling you, that is one of the driving factors in going to war in the first place.
I thoroughly agree with that. Okay, so we've laid out that it's insane. It's
not insane to the people.
No. I mean, but insane in that it really isn't about, as you said, it isn't about the reality it claims to be about. Right. Neither party, neither candidate, almost no politician, and little of the media will talk about the money we are wasting in defense. And let's make clear, you're not talking about Afghanistan. You're not talking about Iraq. You're talking about weapon systems that were planned when we were in a Cold War, and thinking that made sense perhaps during a Cold War, and that those kinds of plans just keep being renewed.
No, it's worse than that. In 1992, George Bush's father was president, and he said the Cold War is over. Soviet Union is dead, and we are now going to give the American people back the peace dividend that they've been waiting for. We are going to cut the military expenditures by 30%. And Dick Cheney was his Secretary of Defense. They went along with it. What happened was, and the reason my subtitle of my book is called, How Defense Hawks Hijacked 9/11 and Weakened America, we were on our way to getting control of this military budget. 9/11 happens, and to fight people who have an arsenal that you can buy at Home Depot, $5 knives and $10 can of tear spear and box cutters and Leatherman knives, we then ramped up not Cold War weapons. We had the biggest arsenal in the world. Reagan, I say, it humbled the Soviet Union. No one was going to challenge our existing arsenal. What we did was ramp up weapons that were designed to defeat Soviet weapons that were never built, penetrate Soviet radar and air defense systems that were never created. That's what makes this whole thing so absurd. You don't need a B-2 stealth bomber, F-22 stealth fighter. You don't need this stuff to fight anybody in the world. China, which is the one they mentioned, has, according to the Defense Department, a ways to go, maybe the end of the decade or longer, to become a mid-level regional power, and their focus is on Taiwan. Has nothing to do with these weapon systems. Nothing. And yet everybody goes along with it. You've got your liberal congressional people. The guy who favors that sub in Groton is a liberal congressman. He got elected with like 57 votes, helped the Democrats secure control of the House, and that's why they're all backing him. And, what do you need? You need another sub here. What's a couple of billion here and there? Who cares, And that's what they all sign on for. And they all back it.
As you said, Boxer, who people might line up with on a lot of issues, comes down and defends the spending that affects her constituents.
Exactly. And I have great respect for Barbara Boxer. I've known her for a long time, and, I voted for her many times and so forth. But and I did confront her about this. And, what are you going to use this cargo plane for? Even, as you said, you raised the question, this is not about Afghanistan or Iraq. No. But the claim is, we need the cargo plane to deliver stuff to Iraq. Nonsense. Over 90% of what goes into Iraq is by ship because it's a small fraction of what it costed to air freight. And then when we do air freight, we have FedEx, we have UPS. They do take stuff, believe it or not. And not only that, we have a considerable cargo fleet. You don't need this super-duper high-tech plane. It's just no one can argue this with a straight face, and yet they're doing it. They're all in on it. And what I'm saying is what's missing in this election, because that's the focus of your show, what's missing in this election is I don't care. I'm very high on Barack Obama. I think he sounds great. I love the fact that he thinks aloud, and everything. He says a lot of good things. The fact is he is going to be a prisoner of the same military-industrial complex unless he breaks that hold now. Because right now, if you go to their respective websites, McCain actually has a more sensible statement on military spending than Barack Obama at this moment. If you go to their sites, McCain, at least on his site, says we do waste money on weapon systems that have nothing to do with the current problem. He does say that. And he does have a record in the Senate of at least challenging programs like that mid-air, tanker refueler. And I would say that the people around Barack Obama right now, they don't want to touch that. They don't want to touch that because the Democrats always have to be strong on defense.
Is that what we're dealing with here? Is that that fear of being, especially against a McCain, that fear that you're going to be called weak on defense means that they will not speak about this?
No, they won't. And what the sad thing is, this is not what got Barack Obama where he is now.
Exactly.
He was challenging the assumptions of militarism. And he has the right in fact, he could just quote McCain, for God's sake. Instead of the DNC attacking McCain, as they did, it's one of the most unprincipled things I've seen in quite a while, that the Democratic National Committee would attack McCain because he allowed jobs to be lost to the Europeans, because Boeing was hurt.
Yeah.
That should not be Barack Obama's position. Barack Obama should say, we're going to look at these defense expenditures and see which ones are valid and which ones are not. And, this, as I say, has nothing to do with the troops, in Iraq.
Let me ask
you, in fact, they were denied the body armor and support that they needed because those were not high-tech implements.
Exactly. Let me ask you a couple of questions, again, taking back to the election issue. Where do... third-party candidates, are there exceptional congresspeople? Are there some people who are standing up to this?
Well, in the primaries, you had Ron Paul and you had Dennis Kucinich. Ron Paul and the Republican, Dennis Kucinich among the Democrats. And that was it. And I do think it's appalling, and it's not like they know the truth. You'd have to be some kind of idiot to think you need stealth fighters, for example. The Secretary of Defense just fired the top military they just fired the top military and civilian officers of the Air Force. Remember, because the B-52s B-52 was flying around with live nukes,
right.
And then there was the high-tech stuff going to Taiwan. But the other charge was these guys were pushing for 100 more of these stealth F-22 fighters that have no purpose. Okay, and they were doing it because Boeing wants it, and Lockheed and all these people are in on it, and they want it, and so that's why they were pushing for it, and finally our secretary, he's probably not long for this world, even in the
right. Let me take it back to this election thing. If the election is the one time when the people get to voice, what would you advocate they do? I mean, do Nader, Barr, McKinney, those folks, is that where you put your energy? Or can you, as we saw on the Obama site recently, an effort that failed, right? Within his social network, on his Facebook site, thousands of people led by Glenn Greenwald and others told him to stick to his original principled constitutional stand on FISA, and he got a lot of flack, but it failed.
We pushed that on Truthdig, and we had Daniel Ellsberg's very eloquent plea. I am for pushing, I don't think you do Barack Obama or the progressive cause any favors by avoiding criticism. We've been down that road. In fact, you've been quoting Bill Moyers about 3 times already, I remember the Lyndon Johnson administration. Bill Moyers was in that administration, and he knows how Democrats can engage in great mischief. That's one of the reasons he became a principal newsman
exactly.
after. So we've been down that road, and Hillary Clinton scared the heck out of me. I thought she was another Margaret Thatcher, the way she was talking, obliterate Iran and everything, And so, no, I think people have got to speak up. They've got to challenge their favorite candidate. I can tell you, Truthdig, our managing editor, my son, Peter Scheer, has been a very strong Barack Obama supporter. He campaigned for him. He took a leave from our magazine to go work in Nevada for him. But now he is very critical, and he's posting criticisms, and I think that's the best way to help Barack Obama, frankly.
So, in other words, what you're saying listeners can do is put their support between third-party candidates, fourth-party, fifth-party candidates who do that, or really make noise,
Well,
hold
let me just-
Obama's feet to the fire?
Yeah, let me just say, first of all, I don't think we have a viable third-party candidate. I know I'm going to alienate some of your listeners and some of my friends. I don't see it. I don't see Nader running any more effective campaign than the last time, and the last time was not effective. He's not building a movement, and I'm not, I admire the guy as a consumer advocate. I'm not interested in that alternative now because it's not a real one. And I do think with Barack Obama, we have a chance for a new politics. I'm not cynical about that. I'm very excited about the idea of a relatively young black male who's got his head screwed on right and is saying sensible things being president of the United States. It excites me, I think it's a very good thing. But I don't think we're doing him any good by surrendering him to the influences of just neoliberals. Who supported the Iraq War.
Exactly.
So I think, yes, Amy Goodman put it very well on a column she had on Truthdig. It's not the man, it's the idea. And the idea here is to develop a more peaceful world and to allocate our resources in a better way. And by the way, on the Barack Obama site, there is a very good statement to that effect. That war is not the answer, that we have to think of peaceful alternatives. Just today, he's not doing the saber rattling over Iran that McCain is doing, So I'm still very hopeful about Barack Obama. Don't read me wrong.
So our job
I don't think
is...
we should be silent. I think we got to demand answers to these questions. Where are you going to get the money? Are you going to keep throwing it down this rat hole of high-tech, expensive military expenditures? And I think we got to challenge these people, and not just Barack Obama, but the people around him. And when you go to meetings where they speak, challenge him, and that gets back to the campaign.
Okay. Thank you, Robert Scheer.